The moist, foul-smelling stench of the inner vents clouded over Chase. His paws stood on bare metal, his dull claws clicking on the surface as he took each step. The only source of light had been sealed off, dooming him to investigate the maze of the ducts in pure darkness. He knew the Vorax was coming towards him, lured over the noise he emitted from punching the wall. Now he just needed to keep it nearby, no matter how insane it sounded in his head. "Rocky," Chase whispered into his collar, "you have the map? You need to tell me where to go or I'm gonna die." "Do you know where the creature is?" The mixed voice came through. The shepherd winced. "Probably backtracking now. I can't stay here." Studying the map closely before him, Rocky looked ahead to find a branching path that divided from the main route. "Can you see a right turn coming up?" "Are you kidding? I can't see shit," he hissed quietly as possible. "I'm totally blind up there." "I don't have any way of tracking your direction movements, but maybe put your paw to the wall or something." Rolling his eyes, Chase took a deep breath and began to make his journey into the enclosed hell of maze. His first few steps were blind. Even after his eyes got used to the darkness, there was still nothing to see. Oddly, the Vorax had fallen silent, a revelation that filled him with terror. It was hunting for him just as much as he was. Keeping the tip of his tail pressed against the wall for gaps, he did his best to maintain steady breaths. The ceiling was too low and the walls were too close, each paw step emitting a low echo that prayed that he couldn't be heard. He took a moment to shake his front paws, trying to filling off of the sweat that was pooling from his glands. Chase couldn't imagine sweating directly from his skin like humans did, as that would probably make his situation 100 times worse. He suddenly stopped, trying to prick his ears into the darkness for any low noise that could give away an approaching threat. He was only met with the faraway hum of a distant air conditioning unit, and the constant churning of his own breaths. Then he remembered something. Chase hadn't been able to smell Vorax outside due to the rain, but in the ducts were things much different. Maybe he'd get different results? Leaning forward, he stuck his nose out and took a hold in 3 good sniffs for his environment. Immediately he cringed back and swaths of unsavory stenches invaded his nose, most notably the wrenching smell of mildew. He couldn't smell Vorax, at least not yet. Hopefully it would come into play, or he would die in the vent. "Go forward," Rocky began. "The first turn you'll hit is the right. Take it." Chase followed the directions accordingly, keeping his tail gliding along the wall. His heart was pounding, sweat pooling under his paws. Sounds of machinery within the walls churned around him, acting as the faint flickers of sound in the dead environment. He was trying to keep himself focused, but Rocky's comment from earlier was returning to his mind. The mix had asked a harmless question. Why did Vorax came out of rubble if Sky was the one announced to be infected? A part of him didn't want to tell the truth, yet his other half demanded that he did. At one point he was willing to sew his own muscles shut so he never reveal Sky's murder. It was impossible to pin him. The creature didn't jump bodies the way Chase described, but it would be so easily if it did. No one knew ever know, but he would keep his sleep soundingly again. He had to tell them. He had to tell them the truth and had to be done with it. They berate him, possibly even attack him. But he deserved it at all. The heavy feeling weighted down in his stomach, and Chase felt it wince as sorrow overtook him. "I'm so sorry," he muttered half to himself. "What?" Rocky came into the radio. "Ah, nothing." The shepherd shook his head, then felt his tail top off. "I've reached a turn, heading right." He carefully turned his body in the direction and continued forward. "Directly after you'll take the left turn coming up." "Affirmative." The shepherd sighed to himself, moving a little faster. He didn't want to spend too much time in there, as the heat was slowly getting to him, increasingly irritated by his blindness. Chase wished Ryder had installed flashlights in their collars, although his thoughts turned to the efficiency of such an item. Chase quietly debated himself whether or not the flashlight colors would be practical. He reached the left turn and followed it, breaking away from the path yet again. All right, Rocky, what now? You're about to pass over one of the gates. Should be a foot or two ahead of you. Curious, Chase reached a paw forward, feeling along the ground for anything different. Sure enough, his paw glided over the intention of the floor, where the area where the gate would slide up and seal off the area. Rocky continued, You're going to pass it over, then make a right. On it, Chase replied swiftly, and he was about to walk over when he suddenly stopped. He froze in his position, ears perking up, as a faint sound met his ears. It was distant, coming from ahead a little ways away. It was the constant echoing of sheet metal, the exact sound Chase was emitting as he walked along the vent. Only it was louder. Tension rising in his fur, Chase took a slow step back, not taking his eyes off from the path ahead of him. Leaning his nose forward, he took a deep inhale of the air. Instantly, the stench of rotting meat hit his nose in addition to the ripe fetor of blood. Rocky, Chase said, unmoving, close the gate. What? The sound grew louder, and the smell became stronger. The echoing noise of the massive animal was no longer a mere tap in the silence, but a booming break that ran throughout. The sound suddenly intensified even more, growing faster and louder as it moved towards him. The gate! Chase stammered, as he was slowly overcome with fear. Rocky, close the... A piercing screech tore through the vent system as Varrock's Miles rounded the corner ahead, holding on Chase's smell. Rocky, close the gate! The shepherd cried, stumbling back. Close the gate! If there was any source of light in the vents, Chase would have been able to see the terrifying creature grip its arms onto the wall, leaning up in a growling snarl. It opened its mouth and screamed out its prey, vibrating its tentacles in preparation to shoot them forward. The gate closed. It shut quickly, just in the time before Varrock's Miles was able to lunge. Chase was safe for now. Even if his life was spared, the shepherd was unable to calm his violent shaking. His tail was shot under his legs, and for a moment he was frozen to the ground. If he wasn't able to get a grip on himself, he'd probably break down crying right then and there. Chase, are you okay? Rocky came in. No response from the shepherd, as he took frantic breaths in an attempt to calm himself. Chase? Yeah, I'm fine, Rocky, the police dog heaved. I'm fine. Oh, Fink, we thought it got you. We could hear its roar from all the way down here. Let's just keep moving. Chase tried to wave off the near-death experience. We have to turn around. Down in the control room, the rest of the pups were facing their own versions of terror. Rocky would have been more than happy to stare down on the eyes of death and of dents, but Chase had already wedged himself into position. The mix was happy to help, but despite being safe in the room, being able to hear Chase potentially getting attacked was riding his anxiety. Is he okay? Marshall ran to the mix's side, whining. Rocky turned to face him, trying to calm the quivering in his voice. He's fine, he just had a run-in. So where to? Chase's voice came from the collar. The gray dog shrugged to read the map for any possible new routes. Turn around, make a left. We're going to take the long way. Nearby, Zuma was examining the propane tank he had found against the wall. He didn't want to tell anyone how much he doubted the plan to trap the creature, even if he was in for it at the beginning. However, the small canister of explosive gas had sent another idea forming in his head. He had witnessed in the courtyard that Varrock's Miles avoided fire, although he didn't know if open flames would actually harm the creature or just annoy it. Regardless, the monster showed clear hesitation when Chase had the blowtorch, and that was the research he needed. As the lab silently made his plans, Rocky was sweating bullets trying to help Chase navigate. Okay, I'm going to seal the first gate, he said, hitting the button. There should be another one to your left. I'll seal that one too, but you'll need to cross over it first. Wait, how am I going to get out if everything's closed? Chase worried, fearing being trapped in the final minutes of his life. I have a route planned for you. While everyone else was occupied, Marshall approached the door of the room and peered outside. He could see a whole nother room, even with more doors and starting a hallway. The basement was bigger than they realized, and sooner that the doors were unlocked, the sooner they'd be able to explore. It poked the Dalmatian's mind on how the entire wing of the lookout never revealed to them. Grunting a little, Marshall pressed his spotted paw onto the door, trying to push it out. His attempt was futile, as whatever it was placed in front of it was doing its job keeping it closed, emitting a faint growl. Marshall kneaded his paws on the ground, preparing himself to unjam the door. "I've passed it over. You can seal it now," Chase reported in. "Oh God, I can hear it behind me," he whimpered. "It's trying to come around the other way." Rocky swiftly shut the gate. "That makes two. The third one I can shut right away." "This feels so easy." "Well, we haven't got to the hard part yet." The mix tensed up. "Actually getting that thing into a trap. I'll just have to lure it by sound. It works the first time." The shepherd winced, eager to avoid any more confrontation. Zuma turned around. "Why can't you just close all the vents at once?" "I tried that already," the mix grumbled. "It only lets me close 4 gates, no more. Maybe it's power consumption thing. I also had to open the gate above the ladder, so we're vulnerable if that thing decides to come for us." Regretting opening his mouth, Zuma looked away with a blank stare. "Oh, lovely." To drive home at this point, Zuma noticed wiring along the wall from the computer before it disappeared onto the wall. The wires met with a metal box with a gauge on it, containing a meter that measured the power usage. "We have the technology activated by the barking sounds, but they can't get efficient power generators for a damned vent system?" The lab gripped. "Again, no one's used this thing in years." Rocky was growing more agitated by Zuma's quips. "It probably worked fine, but wore down as time went on." The lab emitted a growl. "Lucky us." Rocky, I'm in an intersection." Chase could be heard breathing heavily. The vent to your path." The mix narrowed his eyes, trying to get a read on Chase's direction. "The left one should be the one I just sealed. Go straight and you'll approach the last one." Moving. "Chase, I'm going to have to open the first gate I closed," Rocky warned him. "It only lets me close 4. "Yeah, that's... Wait." Chase stopped again. "Chase?" Rocky asked, already boiling with fear. "You okay in there?" No response. "Chase!" the mix repeated, voice rising. Marshall stopped and looked over, also carrying an expression of worry as he heard Rocky's tone of voice. "Rocky!" the shepherd from the collars shouted out. "Close the gate!" The mix went on alarm. "Which one?" "The one ahead of me." The mix lunged his paw forward, selecting the gate on the computer, and hit the button. For a moment he felt relief, until his heart plunged as he remembered that he never had opened the first gate. "Rocky, what the hell are you doing?" "Shit," the mix realized, now scrambling to turn on the terminal. "Shit, shit, shit." It didn't close. Varrock's miles later to scream that rang out through the vents once more, even louder than last time. Marshall froze up as Zuma whipped around in surprise. "Rocky!" Moving so fast he almost fell from the chair, Rocky slammed the button to open the first gate. He then lunged over to select the new one. In a moment he felt like milliseconds from tragedy. He smacked the red button and got the gate closed. A tense silence filled the room. "Chase?" Rocky called out, filled with dread at his realization that it may have killed his close friend. "Are you there?" No response. The mix slowly let himself come to a stop. Then he gently leaned back in the chair. His eyes filled with tears as he stared in shock. Chase was gone, massacred in the vents, and it was all Rocky's fault. Marshall stood motionless, face wide with shock as he processed what just occurred. "No!" he said simply, breath shaking. "No!" The Dalmatian slowly looked down, shot through his heart from the death of his best friend. His silent breakdown was watched by Zuma, who seemed unaffected by the presumed loss. "We failed?" Rocky breathed out, leaving his head down to his paws. "Failed what?" came the voice of the German shepherd. "Chase?" The mix shot back his head up, as did Marshall. "Yeah, sorry, He took a moment to breathe. "That was really close. I had to catch my bearings." Rocky shook his head, wanting to be angry, but the elation quickly flooded his face. "God damn it, dude," he chuckled. "Don't do that to us." Sorry. Where to now?" "Straight ahead." The eco-dog wiped his face as he turned his gaze back to the map. "All right, hold on, He went silent for a split second. "I'm trying to figure out what direction it's going in." Staring in the line near up the lines of pathways, Rocky tried to narrow on the creature's location as well. Remembering the last gate he closed, it could only mean Varrock's Miles was traveling on an upper pathway. It went to the right, I think, Chase said a few seconds later. Isn't that closed-off path? It is. You better move fast. The last gate is all the way down until you reach the end. Rocky shook away his grief and returned to guiding Chase. Marshall needed a minute before he was able to catch his bearings. After a solid few seconds and sniffles and wiping eyes, the Dalmatian felt embarrassed for acting such a way. He could already feel Zuma's gaze on him, and the last thing he wanted to do was lose another friend. Sighing, the firefighter made his way back over to the door he was working on. Sitting down to lick his paw, an odd sound suddenly met his ear. Stopping mid-lick, he picked up his head, looked around the room for the source of the sound. It was a low buzz like humming lights, so quiet he almost didn't hear it at all. He didn't want to disturb Zuma and certainly didn't want to mess up Rocky's focus, so he investigated the odd sound on his own. He approached a wall covered in wires, trying to center it on the low buzz in his ears. "Rocky, I made it to the end," Chase came through. "Do you have a read on the creature?" the mix replied. "I don't know. It went quiet," the shepherd worried. "I think it's far away. Usually I can hear it crawling towards me." Marshall sniffed at the wall, stopping to observe the power gouge attached to the metal box. Gazing into the glass cylinder, he noticed the meter begin to rise. The little arrow within it was shaking, moving out of green into yellow. Rocky?" The Dalmatian tried to get his friend's attention. The buzzing eyes grew louder, now grabbing Zuma's ears as well. The room began to steadily brighten. The light bulbs above them started to intensify. The power was suddenly increasing, supercharging the lights and making them uncomfortable to stare directly at. "What's going on?" Zuma backed up. "What's wrong with the lights?" The bulbs began to flicker on and off, now catching Rocky's attention. Why are there... An electric explosion blasted out in the wall, shattering the room as glass shot out. Marshall screamed and jumped in the air, crying out as the glass dug to his side. Zuma tried to block his face, but was hit with the weight of a heated glass shard stabbing into his arm. Thrown off the chair, Rocky scrambled to his paws. "What the hell was that?" "What was that?" Chase demanded. "I heard an explosion. What was that?" Rocky attempted to respond when the overhead light bulb suddenly popped, spraying the room with glass. Rouge electricity sparked from the broken base as the room dimmed into darkness. "Rocky?" the shepherd shouted. "The gate just closed." "What?" The mix stumbled, defensively holding himself together. "I didn't shut it off, though." As Zuma and Marshall scrambled away from the glass that now littered the floor, Rocky jumped back into the chair and tried to regain control of the vents. He was instead met with a sight that made his stomach drop. "The terminal! It isn't responding!" he shouted, pressing every key on the board with no visible effect. "It closed every gate at once!" The mix herd stared at the screen in horror. Every single gate was now sealed, far beyond what the system was able to handle. "What do you mean?" the shepherd demanded. "Rocky, He went silent for a brief moment. "I'm trapped in here!" Elsewhere in the vents, Varrock's Miles angrily roared, its screech echoing far enough through the corridors. It was heard clearly by all four dogs, making them stop in their tracks. "Get me out of here!" Chase cried. "Rocky, what the hell happened?" Zuma barked into chaos. "You're the technician. Don't you know?" The mix scrambled. "I think it was a power surge." He shook his head, darting his eyes to find any feasible path Chase could take. "Something spiked in the electrical system, and now nothing's working right." He stared forward, realizing Chase was completely trapped in the vents with no way out. "How the hell does power surges just randomly happen?" Zuma argued with a snarl. "Aren't those power surge protectors are for?" "Rocky!" Chase shouted, voice rising in fear. "Something must have happened." The panicking mix struggled for an explanation. "Either the system's just completely conked out on us, or..." Zuma went eye-wide. "Or someone sabotaged us." "What?" Rocky whipped around. "There's no one else down there." "You said it yourself. Power surges don't just happen out of nowhere," the lad barked. "There's something else going on here." "Get me out of here!" Chase wailed into his collar. "I can hear it coming." The mix threw himself back onto the computer, hitting every button possible to no avail. The screen was frozen, static cracking into display, and the glitching through the map. No matter what Rocky tried, there didn't seem to be anything he could do. Marshall was panicking as well, pacing around Rocky's chair as he overheard the chaos. He wanted to help in any way he could, but his options were limited. Focusing was difficult due to the cuts on his side, leaking blood from where the glass was shot into him, even though he had to think of something. "Is there anything you can do?" the Dalmatian called up. "Marshall, I really can't talk right now." Rocky pounded on the keyboard, deciding to go all in and start whacking the controls and desperate to attempt to jumpstart them. Fear stabbing into his mind, Marshall frantically looked around for anything that could help. His eyes locked on a red lever coming from the wall, not inherently visible due to the low position. It had a red scratched handle, and the port of it sat and outlined in black and yellow. Without thinking, the Dalmatian jumped forward and clamped his teeth onto the lever's handle. With no way left to turn, he yanked his head down and pulling the lever as hard as possible. A loud alarm swept through the area. Red lights were activated in the room. In an instant, all power suddenly died from the room. The broken light bulb stopped sparkling and the computer shut down. Even the AC wall could be heard shutting off. All electric systems had completely stopped, restarting the system. "Huh?" Rocky recoiled from the sudden change. "Chase, can you hear me?" "Yeah, it opened." The shepherd could be heard panting as he ran. "I'm heading back." The mix raised an eyebrow. "Really? I didn't do anything." He was interrupted as Marshall came to his side, barking up at him. "I think I pulled off the emergency shutoff of some kind." Zuma recalled. "A shutoff? Wait, that means..." Rocky narrowed his eyes, processing the information. Not even a second later he jolted upright, realizing what it meant. Up in the vents, Chase was hurrying as fast as he could. His heart was racing, blood pumping faster than it ever had. Not a single of their missions ever had been close to the likes of this. He'd seen danger before in Adventure City, but it was merely environmental hazards of falling debris and violent storms. Never before he had stared into the eyes of the monster seeking to end him. He kept his breathing steady, staring into the darkness that made a left turn. He knew if he stayed in the perimeter of the vents, he'd likely come across a ladder back into the room soon enough. It was minutes away from being reunited with his family. He just had to escape the corridors. This fact slowly soothed him, giving him a moment to breathe from the fear, knowing that the job was almost done. "Chase, Marshall activated the emergency shutoff." Rocky panicked in the collar. "Is that how I got out?" "I guess so, but there's another problem." The mix was audibly hyperventilating. "I think all of the gates just opened at once." The shepherd frowned. "What do you mean?" "I don't know, but I thought Varrock's malice might be heading straight towards you." Tension quickly flared. Chase broke into a jog. He knew running would only attract the creature. Breathing quicker, he trained to maintain his composure as he continued forward. It wouldn't be long now until he reached the exit. The pounding sound of the massive object crashing into the vent wall echoed into the puppy and nearly knocked him over. Chase jumped in surprise, smacking his head into the low ceiling. Dazed and disoriented, the shepherd blindly stumbled back into the darkness. He didn't need a sight to know what was in front of him. Varrock's malice emerged before him, cutting off the route to the exit. It initially didn't know where Chase was, only where he was going. Remembering the hatch passed over when it followed him inside. Snarling with anger, the monster bared its teeth, punching its arm into the wall in rage. Hearing the death before him, Chase turned around as fast as he could. Varrock's malice immediately gave pursuit, screeching out as it clawed for him. The creature was hindered by the low ceiling. It couldn't hold efficiently use of its legs to accelerate its speed. Chase was small, able to fully stand up in the vents, allowing him to break into a sprint. Even then, Chase was unsure if it would be enough, as panic bolted in his blood. As the monster's constant roars filled his ears, he remembered something amidst the chaos on the map of the vents. There were branching paths that led into the basement. Unlike the ladder they had originally planned it, perhaps there was another way out for him after all. And he quickened his pace. "Chase!" a voice cried through the collar. "Where do I go, Rocky?" the shepherd pleaded. "Tell me where to go. I can't see the map anymore. It's all shut down." Blindly running, Chase had zero ideas of where he was going. A terrified thought rose in his head that he would die slowly and painfully in the ducts. His body never to be found. Just when he almost tried out, a sparkle of light met his eyes, and he snapped his attention forward. Up ahead was a long corridor, but it ended in a vent cover. He could easily agree seeing the light glowing through the slits. He could see his way out, but the violent screeches were getting louder, and the monster was gaining. Chase knew that he wouldn't be able to make the last stretch. He'd run as much as he could, but he died and tired. In what he assumed to be the final minutes of his life, he made a desperate decision. He knew branching a path was coming up, and he remembered seeing it on the map before he had entered the dark passageways. "Rocky!" he called. "Keep talking!" "What?" "Just keep talking!" Chase barked swiftly, unclipping the collar and holding it in his teeth. Okay," the mix stuttered. "Zuma thinks somebody deliberately caused a power surge. There's no other explanation why it suddenly happened." "Keep talking!" The puppy trailed at the end of his tail along the wall, feeling for an opening on the wall. "Keep talk. Okay, look. I'm sorry for everything," Rocky cried. "I'm not strong. I failed you. I failed the Paw Patrol. I haven't been the dog I should have been. I knew Rubble. I knew something was wrong with him, but I was so distracted. I could have solved all this, but I was just fucking stupid." Sure enough, Chase felt his tail slide off, swiftly locating the darkness where the new path began. Stopping for just a millisecond, Chase flung his collar as hard as he could down the side passageway, then stomped his paw on the floor, then knelt down on it. This was it. Time to figure out if Varrock's malice could reach it, see in the dark. Rocky's voice was loudly emitted from the collar. "I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry!" A perfect beacon. Chase turned his face to the incoming predator, backing up in the original pathway to his freedom. He couldn't outrun it any longer. He could only play the last card he had. The pounding sounds of the creature scrambling through the vents narrowed on him. He heard its jaws open with fierce hissing sound. Crouching down low, Chase took a final step back, pressing himself onto the wall. Screeching in rage, Varrock's malice was only a meter away from his position. When he swore he could see the creature's eyes, its claws reached out to grab the helpless prey, its jagged fangs ready to snap bones. The monster lunged forward. Chase shut his eyes. The sound of it moving suddenly collided with the wall as Varrock's malice turned and charged down a new path, following the voice it heard. As its tail barely grazed Chase's nose as it turned, sending a stench of rotten innards into its nostrils. Tears fell from his eyes as he realized he had been spared. A monumental weight lifted off from his shoulders, bathing his mind in relief. The feeling was so immense, an old song began to ring in his ears. "Don't you," he silently cried, repeating the lyrics he knew, "forget about me." His quivered as he sobbed, hearing the monster moved away. It was an old Scottish song from 1985, one his mother sung to him years ago when he was just an infant puppy in bed. At the moment he remembered for her voice, gently soothing him as he sang, don't, don't," he wept quietly, turning to make haste for the exit, quickly picking up speed as he stared into the creature, death and suffering. The belief was in seconds from being cut down of his mind and had settled on his family. "Don't you forget about me." He could barely see through his own tears. "Chase!" That was the final word from Rocky as Varrock's mouth slammed its foot onto the collar, smashing it into pieces. Rocky jumped out from this chair, not even caring that his paws landed upon broken glass. Zuma looked over in concern, while Marshall jumped in his own paws, desperate for any update on his friend's status. The mix passed both dogs, running towards the jammed door that led further into the basement. Placing his paws against it, he audibly whined, "Zuma, help me get this door open!" "He's dead, Rocky." The lab came to his side. "Let's just take the ladder and go back outside while the creature's still down here." Snarling, the mix whipped his gaze over to the Coast Guard, baring his teeth. Rocky snarled for the first time in years, "Don't you fucking say that! Now help me!" As Rocky helplessly pushed against the door, Zuma leaned back in imitation. Rolling his eyes, he joined the mix on the door, placing his paws against it. Both dogs grunted as they shoved forward all the strength they had. The door didn't open, but it cracked just enough that a puppy could slip out. Rocky wasted no time jumping through, landing entirely in a new room. He didn't even check what it was in. As the mix's eyes shot upwards towards the ceiling where the ducts would be, whining fearfully, Rocky struggled to remember the vent map, trying to figure out where Chase was. Rocky! Zuma tried to call him back. It's not safe. The mix was about to bite back the comment when he heard footsteps from above. He instantly snapped his attention back to the vents, trying to track the sound in his panic. He followed the duck, hastily jogging across the wall and through yet another door, not stopping once to observe his surroundings. He wasted no time nearly throwing himself through it. His door wasn't blocked, so swiftly knocked it open in a dark room, littered with metal shelves. The door, upon opening, carrying into a pile of boxes that sent him flying. Rocky sprinted in the room when he was suddenly assaulted by a box landing on him. Shaking it off, although dazed, Rocky approached the end of the ducts. There was a vent cover placed on it, and seemingly gating off the entrance inside the dark passageways. "Chase!" the mix called up to it, leaning forward in the air to sniff. The sound of echoing footsteps returned, intense coming his way. Rocky held his breath, creeping backwards towards low retreat, as he feared the worst. The sound became louder and louder, and the creature almost hurling itself towards the vent cover. Breaking into a panic, Rocky tried to run. Suddenly, Chase smashed through the vent cover, completely throwing himself off as it ruptured out. Rocky had to jump to dodge the slow-flying cover that was probably made from drywall or plastic. The German Shepherd flew out of the vent, falling into the room. He hit the floor and crashed down on the metal shelf. "Ow!" Chase winced and some papers fall on him. Instantly the mix jumped in illusion. "Chase, you're alive!" He jumped into the Shepherd, throwing his arms around him in a tight hug. "I thought you were dead," he cried. "I really thought you were gone." Breathing heavily, Chase needed a moment before he registered what was happening. Blinking for a second, he put his own arm around the mix and hugged him tightly. "I'm okay," he panted. "I'm okay, Rocky. You did a great job." "I guess," the mix frowned. "Everything went wrong." Chase narrowed his eyes as he gently released himself from Rocky's hold. "What actually happened back there?" he asked the frightful mix. "Why did everything stop working?" Rocky shrugged, shaking his head. I don't know. Zuma thinks we're sabotaged." "Sabotage? Who would do that?" "I don't know. I'm just glad you're alive." The Shepherd looked onto the floor, trying to put the pieces together in his head. Had someone actually intervened? Why in the world would someone stop them from trapping the creature? Chase's mind fell backwards on Varrox, and his eyes suddenly widened. "Oh no," he shot up. Rocky raised an eyebrow. "What?" The sound of upward footsteps returned, emanating from far in the vents. Only those footsteps were significantly louder and heavier, and they were moving fast. "Get back!" Chase barked, jumping into Rocky's side and tackling him out of the room. The pounding racket of metal collision slammed out of the vents behind them. The rectangular passageway distorted from the impact. Groaning as the metal bent and tore, a long bloodied arm, vibrating like a worm-like tendrils, extended out of the vent opening. It slammed its claws onto the outside wall, dragging them across the metal and producing a wrench scraping noise. "Go!" Chase pushed his friend back up. "Get back outside!" The two puppies sprint across the room and wedged themselves through the crack of the door, much to the surprise of everyone else. "Chase!" Zuma recoiled, seeing the Shepherd alive yet again. But the Shepherd had no time to answer, as the Dalmatian jumped him, pulling him into a sobbing hug. "You're okay!" Marshall cried gleefully. The sound of tearing metal screamed out as Varrox ripped apart the vent, birthing itself from the dark cavities and merging back into the light. No longer hindered by the ceiling, it stood up tall and uncoiled its legs. "No time!" Chase pushed Marshall off. "Back outside, now!" Zuma was the first to run, jumping for the ladder, clinging onto it as he stumbled to climb up. Chase was about to follow him when his instincts stopped in his tracks. Tilting his ears, he stiffened his body. "Zuma, get off the ladder!" The lab looked back at him. "What? Why?" He was cut off when Varrox completely smashed through the door, tearing through the wood and sending shavings flying in all directions. The room exploded into chaos as Marshall screamed, and Zuma cried out in his own surprise, swinging its arms to completely break down what was left of the door. Varrox unhinged his jaws and roared into the room. It was disorientating, making Zuma lose his grip and fall forward, lowering its torso onto the ground. back arched and hips raised. Varrock's maliceless tail flailed to life, appendage quickly curved into position, primed and quivering. Then Varrock's malice speared his tail forward with lethal speed. It stabbed into the wall on the exact place Zuma had been before he fell, missing the lab by mere seconds. The puppies began to scatter, and the creature quickly pulling its tail back and eyeing the escape route. It lunged forward and slashed its own claws in a sweeping motion, tearing through the metal ladder and ripping them all inside. Chase braced himself as he was assaulted with the wooden bladed bits. "Run!" he shouted. All 4 dogs moved out of the room, running with no destination in mind. "Where are we even going?" Marshall cried. "We've never been down here." Before Chase could answer, Varrock's malice stuck out of the room, gripping the wall as it spotted the puppies. Snarling as it jumped into the back wall and sprained it off, sailing through the air overheads. They all screamed in unison as they skidded to a halt, Rocky instinctively jumping out in front to shield the rest. The creature landed before them, cutting them off yet again. Growling, it reared to its full height and snarled down at the puppies, etching its claws to the floor. It roared out in pure rage, ready to tear the animals before into new bloodied ribbons. Chase instantly got in a defensive stance, flattening his ears and baring his teeth. "Get away!" he snarled, wanting to protect his family to the end. "Back off!" The other 3 backed behind him, Zuma staying far behind while Rocky and Marshall cowered. Varrock's malice cared little for Chase's show of nobility and flexed his claws. Suddenly a new voice ran up the room. "Watch out!" shouted someone. Their voice was sharp and feminine. Chase looked up to see what looked like a glass bottle sailing over his head, almost in slow motion from his perspective. Before he could register the object, the bottle smashed onto the floor before Varrock's malice, exploding into a column of fire. The puppies jumped back in unison, crying out as they were belanged with some intense heat. The creature abandoned its attack, screeching in surprise as the flames seared into its exposed flesh. Varrock's malice stumbled backwards, madly escaping its claws with the floor, and as it fell backward, dazed from the blazed fire, Chase hit the ground, struggling to get up. As he shook himself back into his senses, his fur felt singed, and dried mud that still caked him in places was now practically welded to his body. He opened his eyes to see a new dog, with a small golden-brown fur, helping his friends to their footing. "Who?" He tried to narrow his eyes in the blurred vision. "Come on," she turned to him. "Follow me." Zuma shook his head. "What?" "Follow me unless you want to die," the new dog snarled, as she ran off through the door of the room. With no other options, Chase looked back at the monster, striking the flame directly front and center. It was completely stunned with no option. He railed his friends and ran after their savior. They ran for a few moments before stopping in an old dusty hallway. Old wires hung down from the ceiling as the dogs caught their breaths. As Chase's sights fully recalibrated, he looked back towards the stranger. "Hey," he called to her. "Who are—" He stopped wide-eyed. He instantly recognized her. It was almost baffling to see someone like her in a place like this. Chase stepped back as the dog turned to face him, meeting him with her own brown eyes. The shepherd was aghast at the sight of her. Liberty?
What's up, my pretties? It's the Lion Queen here. I want to appreciate you all for tuning into this video, and I do appreciate you guys supporting my video by giving this video likes and stuff. If you really enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, comment and subscribe if you're new, ring the bell for notifications to when I upload so that way you guys will get updated for whenever I upload. If you want to follow me on Twitter or DeviantArt, feel free to leave a follow on those if you are interested in following me on those socials. If you want to support my backup channel, known as Miss Dark Shigo, feel free to subscribe to it, as a link to that will also be in the About page section. And with that being said, and that being the case, thank you so much for watching, my pretties, and as always, please stay pretty.